It's particularly important for us because you have fight so much for this, that popularized the phrase women's rights are human rights. A phrase we heard over and over again on women's rights. You are the ones at UN Women's Lounge on Thursday. You are the ones that strategized, advocated, and secured visionary commitments at Beijing, the passage and accountability for implementing Security Council Resolution 1325 on peace and security, and so many others. I hear the stories of young women as leaders amongst the so-called Facebook kids advocating for democratic transformation in Egypt and Tunisia. When I see parliaments and local councils that reach 30% or more representation of women, when I learn about new laws to punish perpetrators of domestic violence in many countries, and other local advances for women's rights, I am mindful of the tenacity and foresight that women like so many of you in this room have brought to this work for decades. Women's human rights defenders like yourselves are at the front line of standing up and speaking out for women's rights, including to have independently run safe houses, to have equal rights to land and inheritance, to access justice in line with commitments to zero. We have come this far because of your efforts, and we have reached an important plateau in the creation of UN Women. And this meeting today will hopefully provide a space to rest, savor the moment, and think together about the upcoming challenges and opportunities. Because the path ahead is an uphill one, so for those of you who are congratulating yourself on what you have achieved, let me say it very clearly, our work has just begun. This meeting could not come then at a better time. As you've heard me say often over the past week, over the next 2 months, we will draft out our first strategic plan to present to the UN Women Executive Board in June. That plan will benefit enormously from our discussions today and the ones we continue. I am glad that some of my UN Women colleagues are here today and they will be listening closely. And I want you to know that our UN Women colleagues in the field will also be having country-based and regional consultations. Our field network has begun this consultation in various regions because we thought we needed to define in a better, accurate way what UN Women will be doing, who will be doing this strategic planning. But we couldn't stay waiting until then. So you probably have read or heard me summarize my initial vision and action plan that we presented already in the first annual meeting in January of the Executive Board. And that plan as well benefited from consultation with many of you. For those of you who have not had the opportunity to read it, I will just tell you a very brief information that the Vision and Action Plan proposes that UN Women will focus on 5 priority areas. And it's based on my convincement that women will never have equal rights if women are not empowered. So for me, empowerment is the essential thing. Not the only thing, but it's essential. And if you can look at that through all different aspects, how women can fight against violence against them, how women can really be sure to be at the table at the peacekeeping negotiations, or how can we be sure that when countries are reshaping the country and trying to rebuild the constitution, how women's needs and concerns and rights are represented there. We need to empower women. And both who have spoken before me have spoken about this, how important the political participation and the political empowerment of women is. So that's why our first, it doesn't mean that that's more relevant than the other, it's just I'm trying to name it. The first one I want to touch with you is what we could call political empowerment, or we can name it as expanding women's voices, leadership, and participation. Because we need to close the gaps in women's leadership and participation in different sectors. And when you see the World Gap Report, you see that we have been, in some way or another, of course at the average level, close some gaps between boys and girls. When you see educational level, you see it as an average in the world, 96 girls for 100 boys. Or 98 and 100, depends on primary or secondary education. But when you go to political participation and political representation, it's the worst of the indicator. Only 19% of all parliamentarians are women in the world, and that is a huge average from almost nothing to 58% in Rwanda, for example, or 38% in Nepal. And on the other hand, when you think on head of states or head of government, on 192 countries, there's only 19 head of states or head of government. So this is one of the areas where we still are very far away of what we deserve, I would say. So that's one very important area. Ending violence against women and girls, of course, is essential. We'll continue working so hard on that by enabling states to set up the mechanism needed to formulate and enforce laws, policies, and services that protect women and girls, promote the involvement of men and boys, and prevent violence. We will be working, of course, and one initiative that we are currently exploring is advocating for countries to agree to a minimum service packages to spur implementation, and we will want your involvement in defining this. Because, you know, there are already a lot of countries with laws, but there is a gap of implementation. I mean, the law that hasn't transformed into changing reality. So we need to do much more about that. The third area, it will be bringing the voice of the women at the heart of the peace and security agenda. Again, there's the Security Council resolution. We last year celebrated the 10 years, but still very little progress. And we will be doing this through women's full participation in conflict resolution and peace processes, gender-responsive early warning, protection from sexual violence, and redress for its survivors in accordance with UN resolution. Many of you know that UN Women has been tasked with coordinating the development of a UN roadmap for implementation of Resolution 1325, another area that we will invite your close partnership on. And again, for me, this is essential empowerment. Because who are sitting on the peace talk? The people who have the power. And where is the power? The guys who have the guns, and the people who have constituencies. So again, we could want to have a lot of women mediators, but if they don't have the power enough and the leadership, they will never be accepted as mediators. They will never be sitting in the table. So we need to empower them much more. We will start soon a program for 3 years where we will be working with 3 components. The first is to have a bigger group of women with mediation and negotiation capacities. So it will never be said again what I heard when I arrived to the UN. We don't have women with those skills. We do have, but we don't want nobody to have that excuse, at least. But it's not only a matter of number. I want to be very honest with you, because to be able to sit down and put parties that have been in a war, you have to be somebody who is respected, who have power, who have something to negotiate. So we need to find powerful, strong women, leaders that are respected by the parties. We will be also, because we know this is not that easy, and parties have to agree on who will be the mediator, we will be working with men who are mediators, or will be mediators. So they will always have to meet with women at the countries, and also have to bring their voices, their concerns, their needs to the peace talks.